it is totally possible that we could all go to war if Ukraine is attacked again.
Let's get the views of the former Conservative Defence Secretary, Sir Ben Wallace. He was in post, that post when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Good morning, Mr. Wallace.
Good morning.
Your assessment, really, of how well the European leaders behind Zelensky put forward their case yesterday?
Well, I think on the plus side, it didn't go wrong like the previous meeting where JD Vance and Donald Trump ganged up against Zelensky and really sort of produced a very unedifying position and made a lot of people rather worried. On the negative, there wasn't anything specific out of it. There was lots of talk. The German Chancellor Merz was specific to Donald Trump in public about requiring a ceasefire as part of a step or as a step on the way to a plan. Donald Trump didn't really seem that interested in the ceasefire, claiming obviously that he's already solved 6 wars. I don't know where they are, but with him. And then a sort of warm words around security guarantees, but nothing specific. So we'll see what comes out of it. It has pushed one step further towards a Putin-Zelensky bilateral. Whether that is going to be possible while Putin continues to bomb Kyiv and civilian areas for any president. I wouldn't like to have sat down with Adolf Hitler if I was Winston Churchill in the middle of the Second World War. And I think that is going to be harder than people think. And there's also the danger that, of course, that the trilateral, which Donald Trump is very keen on, where he is at the center of it all, could end up being Putin, Trump versus Zelensky, because we've already seen Putin, every time Putin says no, Donald Trump just shrugs and doesn't really turn around and put any pressure on Putin. He just turns around to Zelensky and says, you should do something. And that's a track record of how Donald Trump functions in both business and politics. So there's a bit of a worry there.
Specifically over the ceasefire, I mean, the German Chancellor really did say, as in firmer words he could, by the time of the next meeting, at the very least, there had to be a ceasefire in place. But Donald Trump seemed to completely sort of rebuff that. He did say that there would be very good security guarantees for Ukraine, but the details of that are so unbelievably vague. What do you imagine they might be?
I think, we have to go on what's been said before. Donald Trump's idea of security guarantees is to get Europe to do it, and for him to say, well, have American workers extracting minerals on the ground, and that should be enough to deter President Putin. He's not going to put American troops on the ground, is my judgment. He's been very clear, no boots on the ground, has been a long mantra of MAGA. I don't think you'd see American troops there at all. I think what you might see is some type of continued intelligence sharing. And of course, we've seen trailed from the White House today the amazing privilege that the Ukrainians will be allowed to take European money and buy American equipment. Seems to be really the only specific coming out of the White House. And I think if we step back, what are the specifics so far? So the specific so far is that it is possible there may be a Zelensky-Putin bilateral. There will be discussion around security guarantees, although that's pretty opaque, and the United States will in some way support that. Thirdly, we have to be very cautious, however, that the security we're all going to guarantee isn't Putin's security and Putin's idea of a front line, rather than, in fact, the victim, that is Ukraine's idea. And we need to be very, very careful that what we don't do is effectively allow Putin to go off, rearm, move his forces to pose a threat elsewhere on the continent of Europe, while we're busy policing effectively a front line that is ready to go should Putin want to launch again into Ukraine at any future date. And rather absurdly, we could see us policing Ukrainians rather than Russians. So we have to be careful there. And then I think lastly, the takeaway is what's been consistent throughout this, and that is the Kremlin's position. While they weren't at the summit, they were very, very clearly very clear on their position. They haven't changed. Putin doesn't really change on those positions. It's only Donald Trump that does. And Putin's position has been consistent that he does not want or will not tolerate European or NATO troops in Ukraine. They reiterated that yesterday very clearly. Putin's been very clear he wants the rest of Donetsk, including the very important strategic part of the sort of forest belt, which would allow him to attack further into Ukraine should he ever wish to do so. And he's been very clear that he really, that he gets to veto NATO and EU membership for Ukraine. And that hasn't changed. And I suspect that won't change, which is going to put everyone in a very difficult position. Donald Trump will no doubt have got bored by then, or indeed just keep pressurizing Zelensky to keep conceding. And that's going to be a problem further down the track we're going to have to face.
One of the options being put forward yesterday by the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, was this idea of sort of an Article 5 style NATO agreement, but without Ukraine being in NATO. Does that seem sort of practically possible to you?
Uh, well, it is totally possible that we could all go to war if Ukraine is attacked again. Remember, in 1994, there was a so-called security guarantee delivered by the United States and Europeans when Ukraine agreed in exchange for such guarantees to give up its nuclear weapons. Russia was also part of that agreement, but of course it was one of the many agreements that Putin has broken and Europe and America ran away from. So I think ultimately uh, an Article 5 is a very strong, important measure, but it would have to be written in a treaty. It'd have to be ratified by our parliaments so that we all know what we're in for. I would support something like that. I'd actually much more rather support that Britain and Europeans actually start properly investing in its defence now, not at some time over the horizon.
When it's an
And then,
emergency.
yeah, I mean, you can't fatten a pig on market day, and you can't fatten armies and air force and navy suddenly. I mean, this government's current promise on defence spending is as opaque as the security guarantees. It's folded in all the intelligence services budgets to artificially inflate it, and any real extra money for defence is probably not going to flow until 2028, 2029. Well, that's a long time in the future, so who knows? But the best way to deter Putin is by strength. I think we could be a little bit braver. I think Merz has talked about putting in the Taurus Storm Shadow type missile. France and Britain have already done that. That would have the ability to push back Russia and attack strategic structures such as the Kerch Bridge. He's talked about wanting to do it, but he hasn't done it. And I've never seen it deployed in a conversation of, look, Mr. Putin, you keep doing nothing, fine. You keep bombing civilians, so we're going to now put this in. Deterrence is about response as much as anything else. And there should be a graduated response to Putin's ongoing refusal to really do anything other than kill civilians.
So, Ben, thank you very much.